There's a tablet that costs $1 to make it home, and the claim behind it sounds so simple that it almost feels impossible to ignore once you hear it. The idea is that you take this small tablet, drop it directly into your gas tank before filling up, and for the next 300 miles, your engine is able to extract 45% more energy from every gallon of gasoline already inside that tank. It is presented as something completely different from everything drivers are used to hearing about fuel savings. Not a $40 bottle of fuel treatment that promises results, but barely improves mileage by 2% while forcing you to buy a new bottle every single fill-up. Not a $300 ECU tune that risks voiding your factory warranty and requires a specialist charging $150 an hour just to connect a laptop. Not a fuel rewards card, saving you 3 cents per gallon, while the pump still quietly takes $4.80 from your wallet anyway. This is framed as something radically simple, something that does not rely on expensive upgrades, tools, or mechanical changes, but instead works by changing how gasoline behaves before it even burns. The claim focuses on surface tension, describing how this tablet supposedly alters the structure of gasoline molecules just enough to allow your engine to burn fuel that would otherwise pass through the exhaust pipe completely unignited. The idea is that a significant portion of the fuel you pay for never actually contributes to motion and instead escapes as wasted energy. With this tablet, that wasted portion is reduced, meaning more of what you already paid for is finally converted into usable power. The examples used to support this claim are designed to feel real and relatable, like a retired teacher who drops one tablet before every fill-up and suddenly drives 480 miles on a tank that used to give her only 330. A contractor running 3 trucks reportedly cuts his monthly fuel bill from $2,400 to $1,300 without changing a single route or driving habit. A long-haul trucker traveling interstate routes adds 200 miles to every tank consistently, all for the cost of a single dollar bill. No mechanic, no tools, no installation, no complicated process. You drop it in, you fill up, and you drive. To understand why this claim feels convincing, it connects back to a real engineering limitation that has existed since the very first gasoline engine was built. When early automotive pioneers designed the first engines, they faced a problem that still hasn't been completely solved, the challenge of atomization. Gasoline does not burn as a liquid, it burns as a vapor. For that to happen, liquid fuel must be broken into extremely tiny droplets that mix perfectly with air and vaporize before ignition. If that process is incomplete, larger droplets fail to fully burn, meaning a portion of the fuel exits the engine as partially burned or completely unburned hydrocarbons. That wasted fuel represents energy that was paid for, but never used to move the vehicle. Even with modern advancements like fuel injection systems, which have dramatically improved how fuel is delivered compared to early carburetors, the problem still exists. Studies have shown that between 15% and 30% of fuel in a modern gasoline engine may pass through the combustion process without being fully burned, depending on factors like temperature, engine load, fuel quality, and timing. This inefficiency is the gap that the tablet claims to close. By reducing the surface tension of gasoline, it supposedly allows fuel to break into finer droplets under the same conditions, increasing the surface area exposed to oxygen and enabling a more complete combustion process. The explanation moves deeper into chemistry, introducing the concept of surfactants, compounds that interact with both liquids and hydrocarbons. These molecules position themselves at the boundary of fuel droplets and surrounding air, weakening the forces that hold droplets together. As a result, fuel fragments into much smaller particles, and smaller particles burn more efficiently because more molecules are exposed to oxygen at the same time. This leads to faster, more complete combustion, which means more of the fuel's chemical energy is converted into mechanical motion instead of being lost through the exhaust. The claim emphasizes that this is not theoretical, but something that has been studied for decades, with research showing that reducing droplet size leads to measurable improvements in combustion efficiency. The story then shifts into a historical narrative, suggesting that similar discoveries were made as early as 1927, when experiments showed that lowering gasoline's surface tension could improve fuel efficiency by significant margins. According to the claim, these findings were published and tested, but eventually disappeared from mainstream attention. Over time, the idea is presented as something that faded into obscurity, passed quietly between small groups of mechanics and researchers, rather than becoming common knowledge. This creates a sense of hidden information, something that existed all along but never reached the average driver. The scale of the fuel industry is then introduced to add context, highlighting massive revenue figures like $398 billion, $386 billion, and $241 billion reported by major companies, combining into over $1.3 trillion in a single year. The narrative connects these numbers to engine inefficiency, suggesting that a large portion of that revenue comes from fuel that is not fully utilized. If efficiency improved by 45%, the argument suggests that drivers would need significantly less fuel to travel the same distances, potentially removing $220 billion per year from fuel purchases. This creates a powerful contrast between the simplicity of the tablet and the size of the system it could disrupt. The formula itself is described as being made from simple, widely available ingredients that have existed for decades, with no patents, no ownership, and no restrictions. The process of creating the tablet is presented as straightforward, involving measuring specific quantities, crushing materials into a fine powder, mixing them with a liquid component, and allowing the mixture to partially set into a usable form. The tablet is then dropped into the fuel tank before filling, allowing the movement of gasoline to distribute it evenly. There are also important limitations and precautions included in the explanation. It is stated that results are strongest in older gasoline engines with port injection systems, while newer direct injection engines may show smaller improvements due to differences in how fuel is delivered. Diesel engines are noted to behave differently and require a separate approach. Safety is also emphasized, particularly when handling flammable substances, with instructions to work in well-ventilated areas and avoid open flames. The dosage is described as critical, with warnings that using more than recommended does not improve results and may cause issues, especially in older vehicles with sensitive components. The long-term effect described is not just improved fuel efficiency, but also a gradual cleaning of carbon deposits inside the engine. Over time, incomplete combustion leaves behind residue that reduces efficiency and worsens performance. By improving combustion, the treatment is said to help burn off these deposits, creating a cycle where the engine becomes more efficient with each use. Drivers are encouraged to monitor their mileage over multiple fill-ups, with reported improvements starting around 20% to 30% and increasing to 35% to 45% over time. The financial impact is presented in a way that feels personal, comparing an average yearly fuel expense of $3,000 with a potential savings of $1,350 and over 10 years reaching $13,500. All of this is tied back to the simplicity of the method, a treatment costing under $2 per year compared to thousands spent on fuel. The narrative closes by reinforcing the idea that this knowledge has always existed but never became widespread, suggesting that what seems like an unavoidable cost of driving might actually be influenced by factors beyond pure physics. The final impression is one of curiosity and possibility, leaving the viewer questioning how something so small, costing just $1, could potentially change the way they think about every gallon of fuel they buy.